Distance is a strange thing when you have forever. 19 days aboard the Wanderer's Dream, crossing gulfs between galaxies that would take ordinary ships millennia to traverse. 19 days watching Sky discover what it means to be alive. 19 days preparing for whatever waited at the Meridian Colonies. My name is Gordon, the timeless adventurer. And this is the story of the day I learned that being a guardian means more than just fighting battles. Sometimes it means making impossible choices. The Codex had shown us the marker, red and urgent, pulsing with need, the Meridian Colonies, a cluster of settlements on the edge of Andromeda, far from any major shipping lanes or military support, the kind of place people went when they wanted to disappear, to start over, to escape whatever haunted them in more civilized space, which made them perfect targets. "Gordon, come look at this," Sky called from the observation deck on our 14th day of travel. I found her pressed against the viewport, her young face illuminated by the light of a distant galaxy spinning like a great wheel against the black. "That's Andromeda, our destination. Somewhere in that spiral, people are waiting for us." "It's beautiful," she whispered. "So many stars, so many worlds. How do we choose which ones to help?" "We don't," I said quietly. "The Codex chooses. It shows us where the need is greatest, where the balance is tipped toward darkness. Our job is to answer when it calls." She was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, what if we're too late? What if we arrive and everyone is already dead? It was a question I had asked myself 1,000 times over the centuries, a fear that never quite went away no matter how many times I ignored it. Then we honor their memory. We make sure whoever hurt them can't hurt anyone else, and we move on to the next place, the next people who still have a chance. "That's sad," Sky said. "Yes," I agreed. "It is. But it's also reality. We can't save everyone. We can only do our best with the time and resources we have." She nodded solemnly, and in that moment she looked far older than her apparent age. Ancient eyes and a young face, understanding weight that no child should have to carry. 5 days later, we arrived at the Meridian Colonies, and what we found there changed everything. We emerged from faster-than-light travel, expecting a battlefield, expecting siege, expecting desperation, expecting the kind of crisis that painted itself in stark colors of right and wrong. What we found was silence. "Sensors aren't picking up any hostile ships," April reported from her station, her fingers dancing across controls with growing confusion. "No blockades, no raiders, no signs of combat at all." "Then why is the marker red?" Sky asked, leaning forward in her seat. "The Codex showed urgency, danger, something wrong." I studied the tactical display, feeling unease crawl up my spine. 5 worlds circled a yellow sun. 3 habitable, 2 colonized. Small populations, maybe 50,000 total. Mining operations on the outer planets. Agricultural settlements on the inner worlds. Self-sufficient, isolated, peaceful. "Life signs?" I asked. April's expression darkened. "That's the problem. I'm detecting life signs, but they're wrong. The population centers show people, but they're not moving. No vehicle traffic, no ships launching or landing, no communications traffic. It's like everyone just stopped." "Stopped?" Sky's voice was small, uncertain. "What does that mean?" I had a terrible suspicion, but I needed to see it to believe it. "Take us into orbit around Meridian Prime, slowly. Shields at maximum. Wanderer's Dream, run full spectrum scans. I want to know what we're dealing with before we get too close." "Acknowledged, Captain," the ship responded, and I could hear wariness in its voice. Approaching primary colony world, scanning for biological, chemical, radiological threats. The planet grew larger in the viewport, a beautiful world, green and blue with white clouds swirling in delicate patterns. It looked peaceful, alive, normal. But as we descended into low orbit, the wrongness became apparent. Cities lay spread beneath us, their lights still burning, their structures intact, but nothing moved. No vehicles on the roads, no ships in the harbors, no people visible in the streets despite it being midday local time. "I'm detecting life signs throughout the city," April said, her voice tight. "But they're all stationary, indoor, not moving at all." "Could they be sleeping?" Sky asked hopefully. "All of them?" I knew my head. "At the same time? In the middle of the day?" The Wanderer's dream spoke, its voice carrying a note I'd never heard before, something approaching fear. "Captain, I've completed the scans. There's no biological contamination, no chemical weapons, no radiation. But there is something, an energy signature I don't recognize, permeating the entire atmosphere. It's affecting neural patterns." My blood ran cold. "Show me." The view screen shifted, displaying brain scan data from the population below. I'm no neuroscientist, but even I could see the problem. The patterns were wrong, too regular, too synchronized, like everyone was experiencing the exact same thoughts at the exact same time. "They're still alive," April said quietly, "but they're not themselves anymore. Something is controlling them, overriding their individual consciousness with something else." Sky pressed her hands against the viewport, her ancient eyes wide with horror. "Can we help them? Can we fix it?" "I don't know," I admitted. "First, we need to understand what did this. April, any sign of what caused it?" "Searching databases," she said, her processors working at maximum capacity. "The energy signature is similar to certain types of psionic broadcasting, but far more sophisticated. It would require technology that shouldn't exist in this region of space." "Unless someone brought it here," I said grimly. "Someone with resources and knowledge that local colonies wouldn't have. This isn't random. This is deliberate, precise. Someone had turned an entire colony world into puppets, and I needed to know why." "We need to go down there, get samples of the energy field, try to trace its source. If there's a transmitter or broadcasting station, we can shut it down." "It could be dangerous," April warned. "If this energy affects neural patterns, it might affect you too, even me possibly, if it's sophisticated enough to interact with synthetic consciousness." "Then I'll go alone," I said. "You and Sky stay here, monitor from orbit. If something happens to me, if I stop responding or start acting strange, get out of range immediately." "No," Sky said firmly, with a determination that surprised me. "We're guardians together. If you're going, I'm going. You said we learn by doing, by experiencing. How can I learn to help people if I hide on the ship every time something is dangerous?" I looked at this ancient child who had already taught me so much about seeing the universe with fresh eyes, and felt torn between keeping her safe and letting her grow. "She has a point," April said quietly, "and she might be more resistant than you think. Her consciousness is different, older, more fundamental than biological neural patterns." I sighed, knowing I was probably making a mistake, but unable to deny the logic. "Fine. But you stay close to me. You do exactly what I say when I say it. And if I tell you to run, you run. Understood?" Sky nodded solemnly. "Understood." "April, you have command of the ship. If we don't check in every 30 minutes, assume we're compromised and leave orbit." "Gordon!" She started to protest. That's an order, I said gently. The mission doesn't end if we fail. There are other colonies here that might need help, other places the Codex is pointing towards. You continue. You become the guardian if we can't. She didn't like it, but she nodded. 30 minutes. Don't make me leave you down there. We won't, I promised, and hoped it was true. The shuttle descended through clouds that looked normal, felt normal, gave no indication that anything was wrong with this world. But as we broke through the lower atmosphere and approached the capital city, the silence became oppressive. No traffic, no movement, just empty streets and buildings standing like monuments to a civilization that had stopped mid-breath. We landed in what appeared to be a central plaza, a broad open space surrounded by shops and offices and residential towers. Under normal circumstances, it would have been crowded at this time of day. Now, it was a ghost town, empty except for abandoned vehicles and scattered personal belongings. I checked my equipment one more time before opening the shuttle hatch. Sidearm charged, scanner calibrated, environmental suit sealed, though the atmosphere read as breathable. Whatever was controlling these people didn't need to make the air toxic. It had found a more insidious way in. Stay close, I told Sky as we stepped out onto the plaza. Keep your scanner active. If you feel anything strange, anything at all, tell me immediately. She nodded, her small hand gripping her own scanner tightly. I'd given her one of the ship's backup units, modified for her smaller hands. She was taking it seriously, her young face set in concentration. The silence was profound. No voices, no footsteps, no ambient noise of a living city. Just empty streets rustling abandoned papers and the distant hum of automated systems still running without human oversight. The energy signature is stronger here, Sky said, studying her scanner. It's coming from everywhere, like it's in the air itself. But there's a concentration point, that direction. She pointed toward the city center, toward the tallest building visible on the skyline. Good catch, I said. That's probably where the transmitter is. Let's head that way, but carefully. Check every corner, every doorway. I don't know if the controlled population is hostile, but I don't want to find out the hard way. We moved through empty streets, our footsteps echoing off buildings that should have been full of life. Shops stood open, their merchandise undisturbed. Restaurants displayed food that had been sitting untouched for what looked like days. Personal vehicles sat abandoned where their drivers had left them, doors still open, keys still in the ignitions. It's like everyone just stopped what they were doing and went home, all at the same time. Exactly like that, I agreed, studying the scene. Whatever this technology is, it doesn't destroy, it controls, makes people docile, compliant, probably easier to manage a population that walks itself into captivity rather than fighting back. We reached a residential building, its front door standing ajar. Through the windows, I could see movement, slow, regular, almost mechanical. My hand moved to my sidearm. "Gordon, look," she whispered, pointing. Inside, visible through the first-floor window, a family sat around a dinner table. Mother, father, 2 children. They weren't eating. They weren't talking. They just sat there, perfectly still, staring at nothing, with empty eyes. Sky's hand found mine, squeezing tight. "Can we help them?" "Not yet," I said, my throat tight. "Until we find the source and shut it down. If we wake them now, without stopping the transmission, they'll just fall back under control." We moved on, and I tried not to think about how many families were sitting just like that one, trapped in their own homes, prisoners in their own minds, tried not to calculate how long they could survive like this before dehydration or starvation claimed them. The central building loomed ahead, a tower of gleaming metal and glass that bore no identifying marks, no corporate logos, nothing to indicate who owned it or what its purpose was. But my scanner was screaming now, showing massive energy output from somewhere deep inside. This is it, the source. We go in, find the transmitter, and shut it down. What if there are guards? Then we deal with them. Come on. The front entrance was unlocked, abandoned like everything else. We stepped into a lobby that would have been impressive under other circumstances. High ceilings, elegant design, expensive materials. Now it was just empty. An elevator bank stood before us, but I didn't trust elevators in a hostile environment. Stairs, I decided. Slower, but safer. We found the stairwell and began to climb. My legs burned, but I kept climbing. Sky showed no signs of fatigue, which made me wonder again about her true nature, about what she really was beneath the childlike exterior. On the 20th floor, we heard voices. I held up a hand, stopping Sky. We pressed against the wall, listening. The voices were coming from above us, maybe 2 or 3 floors up. Multiple speakers, talking in low tones. The population is fully integrated now. No resistance at all. Good. The harvesting can begin tomorrow. Make sure the collection teams are ready. What about the other colonies? When do we move on them? Give it another week. Let this one stabilize first. We don't want any surprises. Harvesting? Collection teams? Moving on to other colonies? This wasn't just about control. It was about exploitation, slavery probably, or worse. Someone had found a way to turn people into commodities, and the Meridian colonies were just the beginning. I looked at Sky, saw understanding dawning in her ancient eyes. This was what the architects had warned us about. Forces that sought to dominate, to consume, to silence the small voices struggling to be heard. We stop them, I whispered, whatever it takes. She nodded, her young face set with determination. Whatever it takes. We continued climbing. The top floor was different from the rest of the building. Where the lower levels had been offices and meeting rooms, places designed for normal business, this was clearly a command center. Banks of equipment lined the walls, displays showing surveillance feeds from throughout the city, monitoring stations tracking what looked like neural patterns from thousands of individuals simultaneously. And in the center of it all, humming with power, stood the transmitter. It was beautiful in a terrible way. A crystalline structure about twice my height, glowing with inner light, pulsing with the same rhythm I'd seen in the brain scans of the controlled population. Hypnotic, compelling. Even looking at it made my thoughts feel slightly fuzzy. Don't stare at it directly, I warned Sky. Focus on your scanner, on the equipment around it. The transmitter itself is part of the control system. 3 people worked at the monitoring stations, technicians by the look of them, wearing unmarked uniforms and absorbed in their tasks. They hadn't noticed us yet, too focused on their screens. I drew my sidearm, keeping it low but ready. Stay behind me. I stepped into the room. Hands where I can see them, nice and slow. The technicians spun in their chairs, surprise flashing across their faces. One reached for something at his belt, probably a weapon or alarm, but stopped when I raised my sidearm meaningfully. I said, hands where I can see them. I repeated, my voice calm but carrying the weight of centuries, the authority of someone who had faced down worse threats than 3 frightened technicians. Now, who's in charge here? The middle technician, a woman in her 40s with gray threading through her dark hair, raised her hand slowly. There's no one in charge. We're just contractors. hired to maintain the equipment. Hired by whom? We don't know names. All communications are encrypted. We just get instructions and payment. And you don't think to ask questions when those instructions involve mind controlling an entire colony? I kept my weapon steady, my voice hard. The woman's eyes flickered with something. Guilt, maybe, or fear. We're just doing our jobs, following orders. The colonies weren't being harmed, just managed, made more efficient. Efficient, I repeated, the word bitter in my mouth. Is that what you call it when you steal people's free will? When you turn them into puppets? Sky moved to one of the monitoring stations, studying the displays with those ancient, knowing eyes. Gordon, look at this. They're categorizing people, sorting them by skills, by physical capability. This isn't management. It's a slave market. The technician's silence confirmed it. Shut it down, I ordered, gesturing toward the transmitter with my weapon. Whatever that thing is, turn it off. Now. We can't, the woman said, and I heard genuine fear in her voice now. It's on a timer system, remote encrypted codes. We can monitor it, maintain it, but we can't shut it down. Only the people who hired us have that capability. Then give me their contact information. I'll shut it down myself. There is no contact information. I'm telling you the truth. They hire us through anonymous channels, pay us in untraceable cryptocurrency. We've never met them, never even heard their voices. Everything is automated. I studied her face, reading the terror there, the desperate honesty of someone trying to save their own life. She was telling the truth, or at least believed she was. Which meant shutting down this transmitter wasn't going to be as simple as flipping a switch. Sky, scan the device. See if you can find any vulnerabilities, any way to disrupt its function without needing access codes. She moved closer to the crystalline structure, her scanner held high, her young face illuminated by its pulsing glow. It's complicated. The energy field is self-sustaining, powered by quantum fluctuations in the vacuum itself. It doesn't need external power, so cutting electricity won't help. Can we destroy it? Maybe, but... She hesitated, checking her readings again. Gordon, if we destroy it suddenly, violently, the feedback might hurt the people connected to it, like yanking someone out of deep sleep too fast. It could cause brain damage across the entire population. Damn. Of course it wasn't that simple. Nothing ever was. I lowered my weapon slightly, thinking. What about gradually reducing its power? Like dimming a light instead of smashing it? That might work, Sky said slowly. If we could access the control systems, we could ramp down the output over several hours, let people wake up naturally instead of shocking them awake. I turned back to the technicians. Can you do that? Reduce the power gradually? The woman shook her head. Not without authorization codes. The system is locked. Any attempt to modify power output without proper authentication triggers a security lockdown and emergency protocols. What kind of emergency protocols? She swallowed hard. Full power surge. Instead of control, it becomes a weapon. Fries every neural pathway it's connected to. Kills everyone in range instantly. I felt Sky's hand grab my arm, felt her fear even through the environmental suit. This wasn't just a difficult choice. This was an impossible one. Destroy the transmitter and risk killing everyone. Leave it running and condemn them to slavery. Try to hack it and potentially trigger the kill switch. There has to be another way, I said, more to myself than anyone else. April, are you getting this? Her voice crackled through my suit comm, tense with concern. I am. I'm running analysis now. Gordon, the encryption on this system is military grade, possibly even architect-level complexity. It would take me days, maybe even weeks to crack it. And even then, there's no guarantee I wouldn't trigger the security protocols. We don't have weeks, I said. These people have been under control for days already. Much longer they'll start to die from dehydration even if we succeed. Then what do we do? Sky asked, her voice small and frightened in a way I hadn't heard her before. I looked at the transmitter, at the technicians, at the monitoring stations showing thousands of enslaved minds. I thought about the architect's charge: protect the weak, fight those who would harm them. But they hadn't told me what to do when protecting meant choosing who to save and who to sacrifice. I need time to think, I said finally. Time to find another option. Sky, keep scanning. Look for any weakness, any vulnerability. April, keep working on the encryption. There has to be a way to shut this down safely. And us? The woman asked quietly. I stay exactly where you are, I said, raising my weapon again. And you pray I find a solution that doesn't involve shooting you for what you've done to these people. They didn't argue. I stood before the transmitter for what felt like hours, turning the problem over in my mind from every angle. Sky sat cross-legged on the floor nearby, her scatter displaying complex energy patterns she was trying to understand. The technicians remained at their stations, silent and terrified. April's voice came through my comm periodically with updates: progress on cracking the encryption, new vulnerabilities discovered then dismissed, alternative approaches that might work but probably wouldn't. None of it was what I needed to hear. Gordon, Sky said finally, breaking the silence, I think I found something. I knelt beside her, studying the scanner display. What am I looking at? The transmitter's field isn't uniform, she explained, pointing to fluctuations in the energy pattern. It has these eddies, places where the signal is weaker. And look, they correspond to physical structures in the city. Tall buildings, metal frameworks, anything that might cause interference. So, people in those locations are less affected? Potentially. The control might be lighter there. Not enough to break free completely, but enough to retain some awareness, some ability to act independently. An idea began to form. If we could amplify that interference, create more of these eddies, we might be able to weaken the field across the entire city without destroying the transmitter. Sky finished, understanding dawning in her ancient eyes. It wouldn't free everyone completely, but it might give them enough independence to get to safety, to move beyond the transmitter's range. I turned to the female technician. How far does this thing's effective range extend? About 50 kilometers from the transmitter location, she said. Beyond that, the signal degrades naturally. 50 kilometers. That was manageable. If we could reduce the field strength significantly, make it possible for people to move under their own power, we could organize an evacuation. Get them outside the range before we destroyed the transmitter completely. April, did you catch that? Already running calculations. If we deployed signal jammers at strategic points throughout the city, the tallest buildings, the industrial facilities with heavy metal structures, we could create enough interference to reduce the transmitter's effectiveness by 60 to 70%. Would that be enough? For most people, yes. They'd be confused, disoriented, but mobile. Some might need assistance, but they could move with help. How long would it take to deploy the jammers? The Wanderer's Dream has fabrication capabilities. I can manufacture signal jammers based on this transmitter's frequency. 10 to 12 hours for enough units to cover the city, another 4 to 6 hours to deploy them via drone. 18 hours, maybe less. It was a long time to leave people under control, but it was better than the alternatives. Do it, I ordered. Start fabrication immediately. Sky and I will stay here, make sure no one tries to shut down the operation or warn whoever's running this slave ring. Acknowledged. Beginning fabrication now. I turned to the technicians. Here's what's going to happen. In approximately 18 hours, we're going to reduce this transmitter's effectiveness enough that people can evacuate the city. Once they're clear, we're destroying it completely. You three have a choice. Help with the evacuation, and maybe I don't turn you over to colonial authorities, or refuse and definitely face consequences for what you've done here. The woman looked at her colleagues, then back at me. "We'll help. We didn't we didn't realize it would go this far. They told us it was just behavioral management, making the colonies more productive. We didn't know about the harvesting until yesterday." Ignorance isn't innocence, but cooperation might count for something. Sky, watch them. I need to contact the other colonies, warn them what's happening before whoever's behind this slavering tries to expand operations. I moved to one of the communication stations, accessing the colonial network. The other settlements in the Meridian system needed to know what was coming, needed time to prepare defenses or evacuate if necessary. As I worked, Sky kept her scanner trained on both the technicians and the transmitter, her young face serious with concentration. She was learning fast, learning that guardianship wasn't just about dramatic rescues and clear-cut victories. Sometimes it was about sitting in a room full of monitoring equipment, making difficult decisions, choosing between bad options and worse ones. "Gordon," she said quietly after a while, "what happens after we save these people? The ones who hired these technicians, they're still out there. They'll just move on to another colony, another group of people. How do we stop them if we don't even know who they are?" It was a good question, one I'd been asking myself since we discovered this situation. We can't stop everyone, but we can stop this. Save these people, and maybe, if we're lucky, find some clue that leads us to whoever's behind it. But even if we don't, even if they escape, we still saved 50,000 lives today. That matters. "Does it?" Sky asked, and there was genuine insecurity in her voice. "Does it matter if we only save some when there are so many we can't save?" I stopped what I was doing and looked at her, really looked at her. Ancient eyes in a young face struggling with the weight of responsibility, with the impossibility of being a guardian in a universe too vast to protect completely. "Yes," I said firmly. "It matters to the people we save. Every single life matters, Sky. We can't let the perfect become the enemy of the good. We can't refuse to save some because we can't save all. That way lies paralysis, despair, surrender." She nodded slowly, processing. "Like at the last colony. We saved them, and it mattered to them even though there were millions of other places we weren't saving at that same moment." "Exactly. We do what we can, where we are, with what we have, and we do it as well as we can. That's all anyone can ask. That's all the architects asked of us." "Okay," she said, and her voice was steadier now, more certain. "Okay. Then we save these people, and then we move on to the next ones. And we keep doing that until we can't anymore. Until we can't anymore. But that day's not today. Today, we have work to do."
18 hours later, the city bristled with signal jammers, small devices attached to every tall building, every industrial structure, every piece of infrastructure that could disrupt the transmitter's field. April had worked non-stop, fabricating units and deploying them via drone, creating a web of interference that would give the enslaved population a chance at freedom. I stood in the transmission room, Sky beside me, watching the monitoring displays show the effects. The neural patterns we'd seen before, too regular, too synchronized, were beginning to break down. Individual variation was returning. People were starting to wake up. "It's working," Sky breathed, watching as the patterns became more chaotic, more natural, more human. "Phase 1 is working," I corrected. "Now comes the hard part. We need to coordinate the evacuation before we destroy the transmitter. April, are you ready with the broadcast?" "Ready, Captain. Broadcasting on all channels, all frequencies, in every major colony language." I'd recorded a message explaining what had happened, what was happening now, what people needed to do. Get up, get dressed, gather your families, walk calmly to the edge of the city. Keep walking until you're beyond the 50-kilometer range. Help each other. Don't panic. You're going to be okay. It was simple, direct, hopefully clear enough that confused, disoriented people could follow it. Begin broadcast, I ordered. April's voice filled the city, echoing from every speaker, every screen, every device still connected to the network. I watched the monitoring stations, watched as the neural patterns shifted, as people began to move. Slowly at first, confused, stumbling, but moving. Families emerged from homes, supporting each other. Neighbors helped neighbors. The basic human instinct to cooperate, to survive, to protect the vulnerable, all the things the transmitter had suppressed came flooding back. "They're doing it," Sky said, watching the surveillance feeds show rivers of people flowing toward the city's edges. "Gordon, they're actually doing it." "Humans are resilient," I said, feeling something like pride watching them organize themselves without central direction, without authority figures telling them what to do. But not everyone was cooperating. On one of the surveillance feeds, I saw movement that didn't match the evacuation pattern. People running against the flow, pushing through the crowds, heading toward our building. They moved with purpose, with coordination. "We've got company. Armed individuals approaching our location. 6, no, 8 of them, moving fast." The technicians looked nervous. "Those are probably security contractors," the woman said. "The people who hired us mentioned having enforcement personnel on standby in case of system failure." "You mentioned this now?" I growled. "I didn't think they'd actually show up. We've never seen them before." I moved to the door, weapon ready. "Sky, stay with the technicians. If something happens to me, get them and yourselves to the shuttle. April, can you get a lock on those armed individuals?" "Already tracking. They're heavily armed, military-grade equipment. Gordon, these aren't local security. These are professional soldiers." Of course they were. Whoever was running this operation wouldn't trust something this valuable to amateurs. "How long until the evacuation is complete?" I asked. "Current projections show 4 more hours until everyone is outside the effective range. The city's larger than anticipated, and some people are moving slower than others, elderly, injured, families with small children." 4 hours. I had to hold this room for 4 more hours, keep the jammers active, make sure no one shut down the evacuation before it was complete. "Then I guess I'm staying," I said. "Sky, I need you to go with the technicians to the shuttle. Get them secure, then come back if you want, but I need to know they can't sabotage anything." "I'm not leaving you here alone," Sky said firmly. "Sky, no!" She crossed her arms, her ancient eyes flashing with determination. "You said we're guardians together. You said I needed to learn by doing. Well, I'm doing. I'm staying, and you can't make me leave." I wanted to argue, wanted to pull rank, wanted to force her to safety. But I looked at her standing there, this small child in the middle of a dangerous situation, and every weapon in the room swung toward her. "Wait!" the lead soldier shouted, holding up a fist to halt his team. And that's when I realized she'd done it on purpose, drawn their attention, given me a clear shot while they were focused on her. But I didn't take it, because something in their posture, in the way they held their weapons, told me they weren't here to kill. They were here to secure the transmitter, to protect their investment, which meant negotiation might still be possible. "Lower your weapons," I said, my voice calm but carrying across the room. "I have a clear shot at your commander. So do several hidden assets throughout the city. You came here to protect the transmitter. I'm here to evacuate the colonists. We both want this to end without bloodshed." "You're bluffing. One man can't stand against 8 trained soldiers." "I'm not one man," I said. "I'm Gordon, the timeless adventurer, And I've been fighting people like you for longer than your civilization has existed. It was pure bravado, of course. I was one man with a sidearm against 8 soldiers with military-grade weapons, but I'd learned centuries ago that confidence could be as effective as firepower if you sold it convincingly enough. The lead soldier hesitated, his weapon still trained
Me, but his finger easing off the trigger. He was thinking, calculating odds, weighing options. Then Sky spoke, her voice clear and carrying across the room despite its young tone. "He's telling the truth," she said, "and I'm not human at all. I'm older than your species, older than most stars in this galaxy. I don't want to hurt you, but I will protect these people, all of you. Put down your weapons and help with the evacuation, or find out what happens when you threaten a guardian." For emphasis, she let a small portion of her true nature show, just a flicker, just enough that the air around her shimmered with power, her eyes glowing with ancient light that shouldn't exist in a child's face. The soldiers took an involuntary step back. "What are you?" the leader breathed. "Someone who cares about these colonists more than you care about your profit margin," Sky said simply. "Now choose, help or leave. Those are your only options." The soldier looked at me, then at Sky, then at his team. I could see the calculation happening. Was holding a transmitter worth dying for? Was corporate profit worth facing unknown entities with unknown powers? Apparently not. "Stand down," he ordered his team. "Lower weapons. We're leaving." "Smart choice," I said. "April, mark their ship. If they try to interfere with the evacuation, disable it." "Acknowledged, Captain." The soldiers backed toward the door, keeping their weapons lowered but ready. The leader paused at the threshold. "This isn't over. The corporation will come back. They always do." "Let them," I said. "We'll be ready." They left, their footsteps echoing down the stairwell, fading into silence. Sky sagged against the transmitter, the glow fading from her eyes, her small body trembling. "That was scary," she admitted. "I've never done anything like that before." I crossed the room and pulled her into a hug, feeling her trembling ease as she pressed her face against my coat. "You were brave, incredibly brave, and smart, drawing their attention like that." "I knew you'd protect me," she said, her voice muffled. "I trusted you." Something in my chest tightened. Trust. She'd trusted me enough to put herself in danger, trusted that I'd find a way through without anyone getting hurt. "Always," I promised. "But don't do that again without warning me first. My heart can't take it." She laughed weakly. "You're immortal. Your heart is fine." "Metaphorically," I said, releasing her. "Come on. We've still got 4 hours of evacuation to oversee. No time to rest yet." The next 4 hours were the longest of my life, and I've lived centuries. We monitored the evacuation from the transmission room, watching surveillance feeds show the slow exodus. Families helping elderly neighbors, teenagers carrying children, people who had been strangers days ago working together with the unconscious cooperation that humans always displayed in crisis. April kept us updated on progress. 60% cleared the boundary, 70%, 80%. Sky watched it all with intense focus, learning what guardianship really meant, not just the dramatic moments, but the long, grinding work of ensuring people got to safety, the patience required, the attention to detail, the constant vigilance for things going wrong. "There's a group stuck on the southern edge," April reported. "Elderly care facility. They're having trouble moving fast enough. The jamming field is weaker in that area. The transmitter's influence is reasserting itself." I studied the feed. About 40 people, most in their 80s or 90s, some in wheelchairs or using walkers. They'd made it to the edge of the city, but were running out of strength, and the transmitter's pull was making them want to stop, to turn back, to return to their homes and sit down and wait. Sky, stay here, monitor the room, I'm going down there. Alone? She looked worried. April will guide me. And someone needs to make sure those technicians don't try anything stupid. Can you do that? She straightened, nodding. I can do that. I ran. Down 20 flights of stairs, my legs burning, my immortal body cursing me for not taking the elevator. Out into streets now mostly empty, the evacuation having swept through like a tide. My scanner guided me toward the southern edge, toward the elderly care facility. I found them struggling along a street lined with abandoned buildings, their progress painfully slow. Some had given up entirely, sitting on the ground, staring at nothing with eyes that were glazing over as the transmitter's influence reasserted control. Listen to me, I shouted, drawing their attention. Some focused on me, others didn't respond at all. I know you're tired, I know it feels easier to stop, to go back, but that's not you thinking, that's the transmitter. Fight it. Just a little further, just another kilometer and you're free. Too far, one old man gasped. Can't make it. I moved to his side, hauling him to his feet. Yes, you can, because I'm going to help you, all of you. Come on, one foot in front of the other. We're going to do this together. I ended up half carrying, half dragging the old man while encouraging the others to keep moving. It was slow, agonizing. Every meter felt like a kilometer, but they kept going. These elderly colonists who had survived whatever had brought them to the Meridian colonies in the first place, who had decades of life behind them and refused to surrender now. April, I said between gasps for air, how many others are struggling like this? Several groups. The Wanderer's Dream is deploying drones with grav-assist platforms. They'll help, but it's going to be close. We're at 90% evacuation, but the last 10% are the slowest, the weakest, the ones who need the most help. Of course they were. The universe never made anything easy. Do what you can. I'll get this group clear and come back for others if needed. Gordon, April's voice carried warning. The soldiers' ship launched. They're leaving orbit, but they fired something before they left. A projectile, heading for the city center. Impact in 12 minutes. My blood ran cold. What kind of projectile? Analyzing. It's a kinetic strike weapon, designed to punch through shields and destroy hardened targets. Gordon, they're going to destroy the transmitter, and anyone still nearby. Those bastards. They couldn't have the transmitter, so they were making sure no one else could either. Evidence destroyed, loose ends tied up. How long until this group is clear? At current pace, 15 minutes. 3 minutes too slow. And there were other groups, other people still struggling to escape. April, can you intercept the projectile? Not without leaving orbit and abandoning coverage of the evacuation. If I move the ship, I lose the ability to deploy assistance to the remaining groups. Damn it. Another impossible choice. Save the many or save the few. Sky, I said into my comm, are you hearing this? I'm hearing it. Her voice was tight with fear. Gordon, what do we do? I looked at the elderly colonists around me, at faces lined with age and exhaustion, at people who had lived full lives and deserved to see them end naturally, not cut short by corporate greed and cruelty. We keep moving. We save who we can. April, focus on the evacuation. Get as many people clear as possible before impact. Sky, get yourself and the technicians to the shuttle. Leave now. What about you? Sky asked. I'll get this group clear and come right behind you. Go. I heard her arguing with the technicians, heard the sounds of movement. Good. She was leaving. She'd be safe. Now I just had to get 40 elderly people to move faster than their bodies wanted to allow. Come on, I shouted, practically dragging the old man now. Faster! Move faster! We're almost there! They tried. They really tried. but bodies that had lived 8 or 9 decades weren't designed for speed, and the transmitter's pull was strong, making every step feel like wading through quicksand. 5 minutes left. We'd covered maybe half the distance needed. April, how many people are still in danger? Current projections show approximately 200 people within the blast radius when the projectile hits, including you. 200. 200 lives that would end because I couldn't move fast enough, because human bodies had limits even when driven by desperation. Unless. Wanderer's dream, I said. You enhanced, right? The architects gave you new capabilities. Yes, Captain. The ship's voice was wary, sensing what I was about to ask. Can you generate a localized shield? Small area, high intensity, enough to protect people from a kinetic strike? Silence. Then, theoretically, yes, but the power requirements would drain my main systems. I'd be vulnerable, immobile, and the shield could only cover a small area, perhaps 500 meters radius. That's enough, I said. The city center. Cover the area around the transmitter, protect anyone still within that radius when the projectile hits. Gordon, that's incredibly dangerous. If the shield fails, if my calculations are wrong, then we tried, I interrupted. But we can't just let 200 people die because we're afraid of risk. Do it. Deploy the shield. Acknowledged, Captain. Deploying now. Shield will be active in 90 seconds. I looked at the elderly colonists struggling around me. Listen to me, all of you. In 90 seconds, a shield is going to activate in the city center. If you can make it there, you'll be protected. If you can't, get as far away as possible. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, but I need you to move now. Understanding dawned in their eyes. The realization that death was coming, that time had run out. And somehow, impossibly, they found reserves of strength they didn't know they had. They ran. Old bodies that hadn't run in decades pushed themselves forward. Wheelchairs were abandoned. Walkers left behind. They helped each other, supported each other, driven by the most primal instinct of all, survival. 60 seconds. We were halfway there. 40 seconds. 3/4. 20 seconds. I could see the shield forming now, a shimmer in the air around the city center, a bubble of protective energy expanding outward. Some of the elderly colonists had made it inside. Others were still outside, still running. 10 seconds. I grabbed the slowest, an old woman who could barely walk, and threw her over my shoulder in a fireman's carry. Ran, pushed my immortal body to its limits. 5 seconds. The shield sealed itself, solidifying into a visible barrier. I was outside it. So were about 20 others, including the woman I was carrying. 2 seconds. I set the woman down as gently as I could and threw myself over her, trying to shield her body with mine. Around me, others dropped to the ground, curling into protective positions, knowing it probably wouldn't help, but trying anyway. 1 second. The projectile hit.
The sound was apocalyptic, a roar that seemed to tear the air itself apart. The shockwave hit like a physical wall, picking me up and hurling me through the air. I tumbled, lost all sense of direction, felt my body slam into something hard enough to crack bones, even with my enhanced durability. Then, silence. I lay there, stunned, ears ringing, vision blurred. Slowly, awareness returned. I was alive, hurt, but alive. My immortal body was already beginning to heal, bones knitting themselves, cuts closing, bruises fading. The woman I'd tried to protect lay nearby, not moving. No. No. I crawled to her, my body protesting every movement. Checked for a pulse, found one, weak but present. She was unconscious, battered but alive. Around me, others were stirring, some crying out in pain, some silent. I forced myself to stand, to assess the damage. The city center was gone.
Where the transmitter had stood, there was now a crater, massive, smoking, a wound in the earth itself. But the shield had held. The bubble of energy had protected everything inside its radius, though the building containing the transmitter had been vaporized. Outside the shield, where we had been, the destruction was less total but still severe. Buildings collapsed, streets torn up, debris everywhere. But people were alive, battered, injured, but alive. "Garden!" Sky's voice crackled through my comm, frantic. "Gordon, answer me! Are you alive?" "I'm alive," I managed, my voice rough. "Status report." "The shield held. Everyone inside the radius survived. Outside, April is scanning now. Medical drones are deploying. The transmitter, destroyed. Completely vaporized. No one's controlling anyone anymore." I felt a wave of relief so intense it nearly knocked me down again. We'd done it. Despite everything, despite the impossible choices and the near misses and the sacrifices, we'd saved them. Most of them. "Casualties?" I asked, dreading the answer. April's voice came through, heavy with sorrow. 32 dead. 67 injured. 15 critically. It could have been much worse, Gordon. If you hadn't ordered the shield deployment, 32 people are dead, I said flatly. 32 people I couldn't save fast enough. 50,000 are alive, April countered gently. 50,000 people who would all be enslaved or dead if we hadn't come. Don't dismiss that. But I couldn't help thinking about those 32, about the elderly people who would run on legs that couldn't carry them fast enough, about the families who would be planning funerals instead of celebrating freedom. "Gordon," Sky's voice, soft but firm, "you did everything you could, more than anyone else would have done. You stayed when you could have left. You carried people who couldn't walk. You ordered the shield that saved 200 lives. You can't save everyone. You taught me that. Remember?" I remembered. But knowing something intellectually and accepting it emotionally were very different things. "Get down here," I said. "Bring medical supplies. And Sky, bring the technicians. These people will need all the help they can get. And those three know things about the transmitter's effects that medical personnel won't know." "Already on approach," she said. "We'll be there in 5 minutes." I spent those 5 minutes moving through the devastation, checking on people, offering what comfort I could. The elderly colonists who had survived were in shock, some from the explosion, others from realizing they were truly free, that the fog that had controlled their minds was finally gone. "Thank you," the old woman I'd carried whispered when she regained consciousness. "You saved us. You risked your life for us." "That's what guardians do," I said, though the words felt hollow with 32 dead. When the shuttle landed and Sky emerged with the technicians, I saw her face, young but carrying new weight, new understanding. She'd watched people die today, not directly, not where she could see the bodies, but she'd seen it on the sensors, on the casualty reports. She'd learned that being a guardian meant sometimes you failed, and people paid the price. "The other colonies," I said as she approached. "We need to warn them. If the corporation tried this here, they'll try it elsewhere." "Already done," April reported. "I sent encrypted warnings to all settlements in the Meridian system the moment the projectile was fired. They're on high alert. Any suspicious activity, and they'll contact the nearest military outpost." Good. I looked at the crater where the transmitter had been, at the destruction radiating outward from it, at the people picking through rubble and tending to the wounded. "And the soldiers, the ones who fired the projectile, I marked their ship as requested. They jumped to FTL heading toward the inner galaxy. I forwarded their trajectory and ship identification to relevant authorities. They'll probably disappear. Change transponders, sell the ship, scatter. The corporation will claim they were rogues, disavow all knowledge." "Probably," April agreed. "But we have the technicians. They can testify about the transmitter, about the plans to expand to other colonies. It's not perfect justice, but it's something. Something. It would have to be enough." We stayed for 3 days, helping with the recovery. The Wanderer's Dream's medical capabilities were more advanced than anything the colonists had, and April coordinated with their doctors to treat the injured. Sky spent time with the children, playing games and telling stories, helping them process the trauma of realizing they'd been controlled, that days of their lives had been stolen. I worked with the colonial administrators, helping them understand what had happened, what they needed to do to prevent it from happening again. Chen contacted me on the second day, having heard about the Meridian crisis, offering to send supplies and support from his colony. The network of protected communities was already forming, people who knew guardians existed and were willing to help each other. On the third day, I stood at the memorial the colonists had erected for the 32 who had died. Simple stone markers, each engraved with a name and a date. People I had tried to save and failed. Administrator Mara, the leader of Meridian Prime, stood beside me. She was a tall woman in her 50s with iron gray hair and eyes that had seen too much suffering but refused to break. "You're blaming yourself," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. "I was too slow. If I'd moved faster, been smarter, found a better solution—" "Then you'd still be blaming yourself for something," Mara interrupted. "I've seen it before. The people who care the most are always the ones who carry the weight of every life they couldn't save. But Gordon, may I call you Gordon?" I nodded. "Gordon, you saved 50,000 people. 50,000! We would all be slaves right now, or dead, if you hadn't come. These 32, she gestured to the markers, their deaths are tragic, but they're not your fault. They're the fault of the corporation that tried to enslave us, the soldiers who fired that projectile, the system that allows people to be treated as commodities." "That's a lot of people to blame," I said. "Yes, and you're not one of them. You're one of the people who fought against them, who risked your life to save ours. Don't take their guilt onto yourself." I wanted to believe her, wanted to accept that I'd done enough, that saving most people was acceptable when saving everyone was impossible. But it was hard, so hard. Sky found me there an hour later, after Mara had left. She stood silently beside me, reading the names, learning them. "I'm memorizing them," she said finally. "All 32, so they're not just numbers, so they're real to me." "That's good. That's important." "Is this what it's always like?" she asked. "Being a guardian? Saving most, but not all? Living with the weight of the ones you couldn't save?" "Often, yes. Sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes everyone makes it. But more often you do your best and people still die, and you have to find a way to live with that." "How?" she asked, her ancient eyes looking up at me with genuine confusion. "How do you live with it?" I thought about the centuries I'd lived, about all the faces that haunted my dreams, all the names I'd memorized like she was doing now. You remember them. You let them matter. You don't let their deaths be meaningless by giving up or becoming cynical or deciding that saving lives isn't worth the pain of losing some. You honor them by continuing, by saving the next group, by being there when you're needed. And the pain? The pain stays, I admitted. It never really goes away, but it becomes bearable, familiar, part of who you are. And in a strange way, it helps, because if it didn't hurt to lose people, that would mean you didn't care. And the day you stop caring is the day you stop being a guardian. She nodded slowly, processing. Then she did something that surprised me. She took my hand, her small fingers wrapping around mine, and we stood together before the memorial in silence. After a while, she said, "Gordon, can I ask you something?" "Always." "The questions the door asked you about love and life and everything and nothing, did the answers help? Do they make this easier?" I thought about that, about presence and choice, about transformation and growth, about connection and paradox. "They don't make it easier," I said, "but they make it meaningful. Love is choosing to care even when caring hurts. Life is continuing to grow even through grief. Everything and nothing are partners, the people we save and the ones we can't, both part of the same reality. That's complicated,
Sky said. Yes, I agreed. Being a guardian is complicated. Being alive is complicated. But complicated is better than simple, because simple means you're not really seeing the universe as it is. We stood there until the sun set, until the stars came out, until the memorial was bathed in starlight. Then we walked back to the shuttle together, hand in hand, carrying the weight of 32 names and 50,000 lives saved. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it mattered.
On the fourth day, we prepared to leave. The colony was stabilizing, organizing itself, beginning the long process of recovery and rebuilding. They didn't need us anymore. Or rather, they needed to learn to stand on their own, to not depend on guardians to solve every problem. Mara met us at the shuttle one last time. "Where will you go?" "Wherever the Codex sends us next," I said. "There are other colonies, other places that need help. We'll keep moving, keep responding, keep being there when people call. And the corporation, the people behind this, we'll deal with them if they come back, and I'll make sure word spreads about what they did here, about the transmitter, about the slave market they were building. Sometimes sunlight is the best weapon against that kind of corruption." She nodded. "Will you come back? If we need you again?" "If we can," I promised. "But Sky was right earlier. We can't be everywhere. You need to be ready to protect yourselves, build your networks, support each other. Don't wait for guardians to save you. Save yourselves, and we'll be there when you face something you truly can't handle alone." "That's asking a lot," Mara said with a slight smile. "You've survived this much," I said. "You can survive more. I believe in you." We shook hands, and then Sky hugged Mara, impulsively, without asking permission, just throwing her small arms around the administrator's waist. "Thank you for teaching me things. About people. About what matters." Mara looked surprised, but pleased, returning the hug. "Thank you for helping save us. Both of you." We boarded the shuttle and lifted off, watching the colony shrink beneath us. The crater was still visible, a scar that would remain for decades, maybe centuries, a reminder of what had happened here, of what had been lost and what had been saved. When we docked with the Wanderer's Dream, April was waiting at the airlock with an expression I couldn't quite read. "What is it?" I asked. "The Codex," she said. "While you were on the surface, it activated again. There's another marker, another crisis." My heart sunk. Already? We'd barely finished with this one, barely had time to process what had happened. "Where?" Sky asked. 2 weeks away. Another colony cluster, different sector. The marker's not as urgent as Meridian was, but it's building. If we don't respond soon, it could escalate. I looked at Sky, saw the exhaustion in her ancient eyes, the weight she was carrying despite her efforts to hide it. She needed rest. We all did. But somewhere out there, people were in trouble. People who would die if we didn't come. "Show me," I said. We gathered on the bridge where the Codex displayed its map of need. The new marker pulsed yellow-orange, not the bright red of immediate crisis, but heading that direction. "What's the situation?" I asked. "Difficult to tell from this distance, but preliminary scans suggest environmental problems, possibly terraforming failure, possibly contamination. Whatever it is, it's affecting the colony's ability to survive." "Do they have time? Can we rest first before we go?" I studied the marker, the rate at which it was intensifying. "Maybe, if we're lucky. But luck isn't something we can count on." "Then we go now," Sky said, straightening despite her exhaustion. "We rest during the journey, we prepare, and when we arrive, we're ready." I looked at this ancient being in a child's form who had learned so much so fast, who carried weight she shouldn't have to carry but refused to put down. "Are you sure?" I asked gently. "We can take a few days.
The marker isn't critical yet. If we wait, it might become critical, and then we'd blame ourselves for not going sooner. Better to go now, while we can still make a difference without desperate choices. She was right. Again. This strange, wise, exhausted child was right. Set course, I told April. Maximum sustainable speed. We'll use the journey time to recover, to plan, to prepare for whatever we find. Acknowledged, Captain. The stars stretched, space folded, and the Wanderer's dream carried us forward once more, towards another crisis, another group of people who needed someone to care. Sky settled into her chair, already looking at data about our destination, already trying to understand what we'd face. Her exhaustion was visible, but so was her determination. Sky, I said gently, you don't have to study now. Rest. We have 2 weeks. I'll rest later, she said. Right now, I want to understand. I want to be ready. I want to... She paused, and her voice became small. I want to save everyone this time. Not most. Everyone. My heart broke a little hearing that. Hearing the impossible standard she was setting for herself, the weight she was taking on. That's not always possible, I said gently. We talked about this. I know, she said. But I can try. Can't I? Even if I fail, I can try to save everyone? Yes, you can try. We'll try together. But Sky, promise me you'll remember that trying your best is enough. Even when your best isn't enough to save everyone. Promise me you won't destroy yourself chasing perfection. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, I promised to try to remember that. It's hard, though. I know. It's the hardest part of being a guardian. But you're learning, and you'll keep learning. And I'll be here to help you figure it out. Okay, she said, and finally closed the data display. Okay, I'll rest, and then we'll prepare, and then we'll save as many as we can. As many as we can, I agreed. She curled up in her chair, and within minutes she was asleep. That sudden, complete sleep that children could achieve, even children who were older than galaxies. I sat in the captain's seat, watching the stars stream past, thinking about the 32 names I'd memorized, thinking about the 50,000 lives we'd saved, thinking about impossible choices and acceptable losses, and the weight of being a guardian. April appeared beside me in her android form, her hand resting gently on my shoulder. You did well at Meridian, she said quietly. You made hard choices and saved thousands of lives. 32 people died, I said. 32 people died because of the corporation's greed and cruelty, not because of your choices. You tried to save them. You risked your life trying. That's all anyone can ask. Is it enough? I asked. Will it ever be enough? I don't know, she admitted. But I know that what you're doing matters, that the architects chose well, that you're learning to carry the weight without letting it crush you, and that Sky is learning from one of the best teachers she could have. I don't feel like a good teacher, I said. The best teachers rarely do, she said, because they're always aware of how much more there is to learn, how much they don't know. But you're teaching her the right things, that caring matters, that trying matters, that every life has value even when you can't save them all. I nodded, accepting her words, even if I couldn't quite believe them yet. 2 weeks to the next crisis, then we do it all over again. Yes, April agreed. But not alone. Never alone. You have us, Sky, the ship, And all the people we've saved, they're with you, too. Even when they're not physically present. You're building something, Gordon. A network of protected communities. A legacy of caring. That matters more than you know. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was building something larger than individual rescues. Maybe each colony we saved became part of something bigger. Proof that guardianship was possible, that protection was real, that someone out there cared. Or maybe I was just one immortal trying to make his existence mean something, trying to transform curse into calling, trying to find purpose in the infinite expanse of forever. Either way, I would keep going. Because that's what guardians do.
2 weeks isn't a long time when you have eternity, but it's enough time to heal, to process, to prepare. Enough time for Sky to work through her feelings about Meridian, to talk about the people we saved and the ones we lost. Enough time for me to train her in basic tactics, in crisis response, in making decisions under pressure. Enough time for April to research our destination, to compile data, to build contingency plans. Enough time for the Wanderer's dream to repair the minor damage from deploying the shield, to optimize its systems, to prepare for whatever came next. We used that time well. By the time we approached our next destination, we were ready. Not perfect, perfection was impossible, but prepared, coordinated, working together as a team that was becoming more than the sum of its parts. The new colony appeared in the viewport, a world wrapped in brown-yellow clouds, its atmosphere wrong somehow, sickly looking. Terraforming failure, April confirmed. The atmospheric processors are producing the wrong chemical balance. Within 6 months, the air will be unbreathable. The colonists have 9,000 people and insufficient evacuation capacity. So we help them evacuate, Sky said. Get them off-world before the atmosphere kills them. Or we fix the atmospheric processors, I said. Give them back their world. Let them stay in the home they've built. Can we do that? Sky asked. I don't know, I admitted. But we're going to try. Because that's what guardians do. We try to save not just lives, but homes, communities, the things people have built that make life worth living. Sky smiled, tired but genuine. Okay, let's save their world. The ship descended toward the colony, and I felt the familiar mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Another crisis, another group of people depending on us, another chance to make a difference. I thought about the architects, somewhere beyond the edge of known space, pursuing mysteries I couldn't imagine. I hoped they'd be proud of what we were building, of how we were carrying forward the mission they had given us. I thought about Kale and Arya, about Chen and Mara, about all the people whose stories had become part of mine, how connection made immortality bearable, how purpose made existence meaningful. I thought about the 32 names from Meridian, about how I'd carry them forward along with all the others, about how the weight of remembering was heavy but necessary. And I thought about Sky, this ancient child who was teaching me as much as I was teaching her, who was learning to be a guardian while showing me what guardianship really meant. The colony grew closer. People below needed us. A world needed saving. And we were ready. Not perfect, not without fear or doubt, but ready to try, ready to care, ready to do whatever it took to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Because we were guardians. Because someone had to stand against the darkness. Because every life mattered, every world mattered, every story mattered. And because we had forever to keep trying, keep learning, keep growing into the role the architects had given us. The Wanderer's dream entered the atmosphere,
and I felt the weight of purpose settle over me. Heavy but right, meaningful, necessary. Another world, another story, another chapter in the endless book of guardianship. And I was ready for it. The hum of the wanderer's dream descending through toxic clouds. Sky's voice asking questions, always learning, always growing. April's steady presence, guiding us through the unknown. And ahead, 9,000 people waiting for someone to care enough to save them. We would not fail them. Next time on Chronicles of the Timeless Adventurer, The Poisoned Sky.